Cochise County, and welcome to the Michael Zehr Show. Today's date is February 24th, 2023. We had a couple hiccups earlier this morning, so we're going to start all over and pretend like those two hiccups didn't even happen. So, we're coming to you from the Rising Eagle Studios here at the Warrior Healing Center, and my special guest veteran today is Michelle Mitzner. Michelle, thank you so much for coming in and joining us this morning. We appreciate it very much. So let's get to know a little bit about you. Where was home? Where are you from? Raised? That kind of stuff.
I was born in Ironton, Ohio, in the Appalachian Mountains, and I was adopted by my biological aunt, who actually went into the Army when I was, I think, 6. She was one of the first females at Camp Casey, Korea. Her father was also in the military, and then her grandfather served in World War II.
Isn't that great, though, that she stepped up and adopted you like that?
She did.
That's awesome?
Yes. If it wasn't for her, I probably wouldn't have made it past 10.
Good job, Auntie.
And then one of the husbands she married, who I consider my father, adopted me and my sister. He was a first sergeant at the 101st Airborne Division in Fort Campbell, Kentucky.
Oh, 101st Airborne, huh?
Yeah,
oh,
Clarksville,
wow.
Tennessee.
Yeah.
And then we lived there until I was in the 9th grade, and then I went to Cedar Hill, Tennessee for 9th grade. I went to Key West, Florida, which I absolutely loved. I went there for 10th and 11th grade, and then I came back to Clarksville and graduated high school, Clarksville High School, and that's where I enlisted in the military.
Oh, okay. And when you enlisted, you were telling us earlier that you wanted to originally be in the Marines?
Yes, I actually got accepted into the Marines, but back then I had to have a weight waiver. You know, I was a weightlifter, I was a runner, and so they made me take a picture in a bikini. They did a tape. I had to send that off, and I was supposed to go to the Defense Language Institute for 2 years because of my ASVAB scores. How different would my life have been, right?
Yeah.
But things got really bad at home. You know, my father had PTSD, he was a Vietnam vet. So I went in to check, and the Air Force was like, we can get you out of here in a couple of weeks. So I ended up signing with them, and I went security police in the Air Force.
You know, believe it or not, I've interviewed in Sierra Vista area in our community. I've interviewed like 4 veteran female Marines. That's because the Marine Corps, I don't really think they have a lot of women in there. And then this is an basically Army community, but for them to be here, so it was a real honor to be able to interview all of them, and for them to share their stories. So then you ended up going into the Air Force, and what year was that?
It was in 88.
In 1988, and you went to Lackland Air Force Base?
Yeah, at that time they had the basic training, and they had the security police training. Now, I did go through basic training twice. I got recycled.
Okay.
I was the dorm chief.
No shame.
And we were graduation week. This is a true story. Want me to tell it to you?
Yeah.
So we had an inspection. This lieutenant colonel came in, and one of the girls who'd been on a waiver, you know, I'd been working with her. She was overweight. And they found candy bars. This is a true story, Michael. They found candy bars shoved in the bars of her bed. Now, I knew she had been cheating, you know, and I was like, you know, let's get you back here on track. Let's take you back out, you know, and I tried to help her. But when questioned, did I know? I said yes. So they recycled me back to uncanned pickle the first week.
Wow.
So of course I was doing what do they call that? The door duty, when you have to monitor the door. I did that because I'd already been through the first week. So that was crazy. That was the beginning of my Air Force career.
Well, at least you kept your honor. You didn't lie, right?
No.
So, but candy bars, I mean.
Well, back then they were strict. We couldn't have cell phones. You're not supposed to. We couldn't use the vending machines. What you got in the chow hall, that was what you got.
Yeah.
So, it's totally different now. But back then, it was an honor. It was a serious thing. So I did happen to make it through. Luckily, I had some really good drill sergeants. So they made me, I was the flag bearer. I said, I don't want to be squad leader. I don't want to be anything. So I was able to do the flag. So it gave me a little bit of my pride back. But it didn't put me in a position where I had to, you know, be afraid that people weren't doing what they were supposed to do. So they handled it really well.
Did you, when you got recycled back, did the the young lady that was cheating, did she also get recycled?
She
And were you in
actu-
the same class too?
She actually got recycled, but they put her in a different
okay.
flight. She got recycled 2 more times after that because of her weight. And as
Okay.
far as I knew, she stuck it out through 3 or 4 cycles, got down to her
Wow.
weight, got her numbers, and she ended up, that's the last I heard, that she actually stuck it out because I saw her around. Yeah, so.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool.
That's crazy.
So when you enlisted, did you get to you shared with us earlier that you went into the security patrol,
Yes.
which is the military police.
Yeah, back then you had law enforcement
Right.
and
Thank
you had
you.
security. Now, I love soldiers, love airmen, but the recruiter showed me a picture of a law enforcement vehicle and then signed me up for security police. So I never saw a law enforcement vehicle.
Okay.
I
All
spent
right.
my time humping around a C-130 or at a nuclear bunker or at an intercontrol point. But I liked it. I
okay.
learned a lot. I was on the Cobra flight. I was the second female when I went to Turkey. I went to Incirlik. Turkey was my first base. And so we had the flight where we would go around at night and I guess spy on the nationals. And we ended up finding out one of the nationals working the commissary had stolen hundreds of thousands of dollars. So we would go around the base at night and do the perimeter and kind of stealthy at night. So that was really cool. I wouldn't have been able to do that if I was law enforcement.
So you had never been overseas or anything. So going to Turkey, that was like your very first exposure to a different culture, a different
Culture shock.
Yeah.
Yeah. Made me,
What was that like?
It was it's like I said earlier, it made me proud to be an American because we take for advantage, we don't realize what we have here.
Right.
We don't realize the opportunities that we have over there. It's a very, poor country. The females aren't as oppressed as they were when I went to Saudi, but they weren't, treated the same as the males. They have very strict laws about alcohol and driving. We were kind of in a protected area. So right off of the base, they had a road and they catered to the Americans. We had underground discos. We had places to eat where we could buy stuff, the meerschaum pipes and the paintings and stuff. So it was nice.
And how long were you in Turkey for?
I was there 18 months.
For 18 months?
And
What
then,
was your fondest memory of being there, looking back on it?
honestly, I did a lot of drinking when I was there. A lot of drinking, a lot of fighting with my then husband. I worked out a lot. I think my fondest memory was the closeness that I had with my flight. I was a 60 gunner and a 203 gunner.
Okay.
So you were pretty much assigned to a flight, and then we had our Sergeant Ireland, who was one of the best people I've ever met since then and since. So it was a closeness. If you needed something, you're always protected. You always had someone to go somewhere with you. Somebody was always watching your back. And I think that was my fondest. That was my first experience with people that weren't my family,
Okay.
actually caring about me and going the extra mile. And I learned a lot of lessons from that.
So after leaving Turkey, you had been in for a total of about 2 years,
Yeah.
considering your training time and everything? So where did you go from Turkey?
I went to Holloman Air Force Base. So I went to Holloman, and then I was
Where's that at?
in New Mexico.
In New Mexico?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's by Alamogordo.
All right.
Alamogordo's not much, but the base is beautiful. It's by White Sands Missile Range.
Okay.
And so I was an armor part-time, and I was entry control.
White Sands is a beautiful area, isn't
Yeah,
it?
it is.
Seeing all that sand out there, and oh my gosh. People would go out there and they'd write their names in the sand and
Yep.
stuff like that and be taking pictures. And
I actually went there last August with my aunt. We took a trip from here. We drove from here back to Ohio, and I took her to White Sands. We went to Loretta Lynn's Ranch. We went to
oh wow.
Holloman Air Force Base. Yeah, she's 20-something years in the reserves too.
Okay.
So yeah, so a lot of military in my family.
So how long were you at Holland Air Force Base, you said?
Yeah, Holloman.
Holloman.
I was there. I got pregnant shortly after getting there.
Okay.
So they had me in the armory until I was like 6 months, and the captain's like, "What are you doing in the armory? I guess pregnant people, you're not supposed to be there." So I went to entry control, and then when I was pregnant, just about ready to give birth in December of 1990, the Gulf War kicked off.
Okay.
And we could do a whole other live stream about that.
What was your rank at the time?
I got below the zone. I was an E4.
Okay.
I mean, it's really hard to make rank in the Air Force, so I was very lucky to be able. I made E4, I think, in 3 years, which is
pretty quick.
Yeah, it was pretty quick. And then it kicked off. So when I was pregnant, I was hearing, and back then you only got 6 weeks of maternity leave.
Okay.
So during that time, we heard about it. So I was basically told shortly after I went back to work that we were going to send, a flight of security police there, and I could either go now. I was in the last year of my enlistment, but back then they would deploy you and extend you. They didn't care if you had 2 months or 4 months or 5 months left on your enlistment.
Right.
I think now they have some sort of rule about that, but so I was told that I could either go with the first group and spend just a few months, or I could be voluntold with the second group. And that would be up to a year. And so I chose to volunteer to go early.
And I think it's really great how the military's adapted and changed, because it used to be when women got pregnant, they were forced to get out of the military.
Yes.
And the fact that you were able to give birth and still be able to complete your enlistment and stay in the military, it's a testament as to how things have changed for the good for the women in the military.
Yeah, I know some friends that were in 25 years, and they had several children. They were married, even one that was married to another military member. And the military worked to keep the families together at the different stations, and they were able to have, one lady I know, she was a nurse, and she had 5 children, and she's still in.
Wow.
I know, right?
So where was your next duty station after that?
I went to, was it Dahran, King Fahd Air Base in Saudi.
In Saudi, okay.
Yeah, that's where I went. That was, boy, you talk about a culture shock. Woo! I was the only female out of 326 men. I was the only female in the security police flight.
Okay.
So you would, I know some women have problems. I know that military sexual trauma is a thing in the Air Force.
Correct.
I guess I was lucky.
It's a thing in every branch.
It is. I guess I was lucky. Me and my baby's father got married right before I deployed, and I got hit on over there. But when the actual Saudi males were more of a danger to me than the American males were. I found a couple of guys, so wherever I went, they went with me. So I had a good experience.
Did when you would leave like the base there in Saudi? Well, if you were allowed to leave the base, did you have to wear a hijab or whatever they call the covering?
That's a good question. We didn't.
No? Okay.
But we had to wear our sleeves here buttoned up. We had to wear our uniforms up like this, and we had to have a hat on, and we had to have our hair up. So even on the flight line, it's 126 degrees on the flight line. So I'm there in full gear. Everything's buttoned up. I got a flak vest. I got my helmet on. I got the M16. I got the rounds. I got, the pistol on there. And I'm looking on the flight line, and I see the air crews playing volleyball in their white T-shirts. and they're playing shirts and skins, right?
Right.
And I'm dying.
And you're sweating because you had to wear...
And then I only went off post a few times. And when I did, I always took some males with me.
Okay.
We had... there was a female who went off post, and she had her, because it's very hot, Michael, it's very hot.
Right.
So she had her sleeves rolled up, and she had her, and we had to be in uniform when we went off post. We had no civilian clothes at all.
Okay.
So she had her shirt open, and a group of females, I guess, they actually just disbanded those in the last 2 or 3 years. With the black, the totally covered, got out and started beating her with a stick.
Oh my gosh.
And so the guys were trying to pull her off, and so the guys rescued the airman, buttoned her up and took her back on post. So it was very serious. And I guess they had those roving female, whatever, I can't remember what they're called, but they had them until just a few years ago, because I did a paper on it for college, and it talked about that.
Wow.
So the females would get you before the guys would.
What was your daily duty routine like when you were over in Saudi? What did you do?
I actually worked the flight line. We worked 6 days on, 1 day off. We worked 12-hour shifts, which, if you know people that have been security police, it's actually 14 hours, because you have to go, you have to get your weapon, you have to go to, guard mount, you get your briefing, and then they have to take you to your, to your duty station, and then you have to wait to get relieved. So it's actually 14 hours. Back then I was in really good shape. I would actually get off duty and go to an underground gym and teach aerobics for 45 minutes, and I would work out.
Okay.
And I did that
So you taught aerobics then?
Yeah, I was in really good shape.
You really liked that?
I did. Well, it was a release.
Uh-huh.
You know, because we're so stressed out and we're so, you know, and we couldn't drink over there. So I did that for the first few weeks until I had a run in with the Saudi base commander. And then basically that was one of the scariest points of my life. So we went into lockdown. So when you're on the flight line, there's little E4 right there. And I was told by this captain, nobody comes on the flight line for the next, until we tell you, unless the picture's in this book. And there was 3 pictures in the book. And anybody else that tried to come in, they had to drive up and escort them in. So these are my orders, right? Doesn't matter what your rank is, those are your orders. So I'm there, and this truck pulls up. I don't know his name. I can still see the face. There was a guy with a whole bunch of, ribbons on, in a suit and this. And then there was a driver and 2 guys in the back. And the driver was the translator. And he's like, we need to get on. And I'm like, I called for an escort. Nothing. No answer on the radio. And so I'm like, you have to wait for the escort. And so the guy's like, yelling to the other guy. And I'm like, I'm sorry. So I take the weapon off and I'm holding it. And so I stand up next to it and I'm calling and calling and calling on the radio. No answer. And this guy's getting mad. His face is getting all red and he's, gesturing wildly. And then so I go and I put my body sideways and the guy pulls up. And so I get in front of him and the tire's like right here on my foot.
Wow. Yeah.
And I'm calling on the radio, trying to keep it together. Because to these guys, I'm nobody. I'm a white woman.
Right.
Who are you? And so finally, after me calling and calling, and this guy, was like doing this with his, going to get his weapon and gesturing, and the van squeals up, and these captain lieutenant come up, and they start screaming at me, and I'm like, these are my orders. These are the ones I was given. So they let him go in. They escorted him in, and my captain came and relieved me. And of course, they apologized to me later because it doesn't matter if you're E1, E2, E3, especially in entry control, and you have weapons on the flight line. So after that, I spent 1 day on the flight line and 1 day in the armory.
Well, I would think that communication issues between having a translator, that could be a very hairy situation. It could be pretty scary.
That and the fact that I was the female. And this guy was like the assistant Saudi base commander. It was his base that we were on. So for me, a white woman, young woman, I was like 23, to be telling him he couldn't go on, he probably would have, shot me if he thought he could get away with it.
Tim said we should hire Michelle to work at the Warrior Healing Center.
And so after that, I spent half the time in the armory. And of course, unfortunately, they had the depleted shells in the armory, which I didn't know about until years later. Again, a whole other story. And so I got to do armory half the time and flight line half the time. And I did that. And then about a month and a half in, I got really, really sick. Again, we could do a whole stream on Gulf War syndrome and all that. But I guess in Khobar Towers, where I was, you remember DDT from the 70s? The pesticides they outlawed? Well, they sold them.
To the Saudis?
Yeah, so we had these black barrel trucks would go around 24 hours a day, and the air was so thick that you couldn't hardly walk. And then we had, of course, the vaccinations and then the PB tablets that we had to take. And so all of these things combined, they believe, is why a lot of us, the fatigue, the nerve damage, stuff like that.
So were you over in Saudi when Saddam was launching Scuds over in that?
No, I think that was before,
Israel,
right before.
That was before.
That was before, because I remember I was at an entry control point when we captured Saddam, and we were all like, "Yay!" Again, we're not going to get into the truth about all that, but so I got very sick, and I spent a couple of days in an Army hospital over there. And then after that, I didn't teach aerobics for the last month and a half I was there. I just did my thing, went home, went to bed, and then when I flew home. And I always, I got off the plane and my baby was 9 months old at the time, 9 or 10 months old. I hadn't seen her, and I got off the plane and kissed the ground right there. And people were laughing at me. And I was like, I was so happy to be home, be alive, because we lost a couple people over there.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, the VA didn't recognize Gulf War syndrome or any of the things that our veterans have been suffering for years. And like the Agent Orange from Vietnam had to fight to get their their benefits, and now that they passed that PACT Act, I know that
Thank
they
you,
redid.
finally.
They did a lot of questions on there for like toxic exposure and stuff like that. So if you did you file a claim then with them since you?
No, because when I was in my 20s,
Oh, you
nobody.
should.
Well, I have now.
Okay.
But in my 20s, nobody knew what that was. I
Right.
just came back. I got pregnant again. I was just exhausted. And over the years, things got worse. My body started breaking down. You know, the light sensitivity, the chemical sensitivity, the headaches were crippling. And they're like, well, you're just depressed. And so you're depressed is causing your pain. I'm like, no, I have pain and fatigue. That's why I'm depressed. So I suffered for a long time. And I went into corrections for 10 years and was a correctional supervisor. I just suffered. I didn't know. And then they passed the presumptives, I guess, in 2009. Was it 2009 or?
I'm not sure exactly what year it was. I know the PACT Act was just passed here last August, 2022.
Yeah, so they passed presumptives for service in the Gulf if you had like fatigue and pain, and of course everybody has tinnitus that was in the military, and the headaches. So I actually went to do a claim, and I took it down to the lady that worked with the VA at the local office, and she's like, you don't qualify because it's not in your records. You've been out for 20 years. What makes you think you can get this? And so I had been talking on Facebook with a gentleman named Anthony Hardy. Hopefully he's still alive. He was with the 9/11 Commission in Washington, fighting. And I think he was a retired captain, and had been talking to me. And I emailed him when I got home, and he's like, go pull your claim and do it yourself. So I actually pulled the claim. I did a letter of intent to file in March, because that starts the clock, and I'm going to do a whole different live stream on that.
Right.
So if you think you want to file a claim, you do a letter of intent to file, send it to the VA, return receipt, and your clock starts.
For a year, and you have up to a year to file.
To a year.
Right.
And so I actually spent the next couple of months getting everything, pulled records from 15, 20 years ago, statements from your family and friends, and they do matter. They say, oh, they don't matter. Yes, they do. They take it into consideration. And then I turned my claim in October of 2010. And then at the time, when I was doing my research, they finally did the presumptives for Agent Orange, finally for the Vietnam veterans.
Right.
So my dad was a retired first sergeant, and he had all the presumptives, the diabetes mellitus, the ischemic heart disease. He had all of it. So I told him to do his claim. So we did his claim. His claim was actually adjudicated in 11 months, because at the time, Congress said no other claims get done until the backlog of the Vietnam Agent Orange claims get done. So my claim took 26 months. My dad's claim took 10 or 11 months. But he finally got paid decades after, and he'd been suffering for decades. And so, yeah.
And I don't think it's just about the money. Yeah, the money's nice, but it's also the recognition and the fact that to get healthcare treatment for it, too.
The support
is a big thing, right?
Yeah, and then so he ended up getting 70%. We appealed, he got 90%, and then we did an IU claim. I tell everyone, if you're 70% above, to do an individual unemployability claim. And we thought he wouldn't get it because he was in his 60s. But the difference between 90% and 100% is $1,500, $1,600 a month. Plus eye care and dental care and education for your family. It's a big difference between 90 and 100.
Right.
So, and then I did my claim, and the VA kept kicking it back, saying, oh, it's not in your records and you don't qualify. So I literally pulled CFR 38, the regs, and then I went to the VA website where they said you're presumptive if you have these things, printed off their own information.
And used it against
them? Sent it back to them. And I was like, no, that's not true. And that happened 3 times. In 26 months. But
that shouldn't have happened at all, period.
No, but Anthony was Anthony Hardy, if you're still out there, he's just, the guy saved my life, literally. And so I did it, and finally it came back. Of course, the back pay was nice, so that's why I say, so when I did the claim, I filed it in October, I got paid all the way back to March because of that letter of intent to file.
Okay.
That's a big difference. So
I know we jumped the gun there a little bit on going ahead.
It's where my heart is, sorry.
Yeah. So after Saudi, then where did you go from there?
I got out.
You got out after Saudi?
I was sick.
So you served how many years at that time?
A little under 4.
4 years?
Yeah. I came back, and they gave us 4 weeks off. And in that 4 weeks, I got pregnant because me and my husband at the time, I was like, I want to have a baby. I want to have another baby. I don't want to, this is what I want to do. And then I went into my sergeant or my captain and I said, I don't ever want to wear the uniform again. I said, I'm done. Because I was still sick. I was still having issues. And I'm like, I got to figure out what this is. And so he let me out a few months early. At the time, they let you out honorably. I think it was like 2 months early I got out. So.
And where did you go when you got out?
I went back home to rest and be pregnant. I was tired.
Which is where?
Back to Clarksville.
Back to Clarksville, Tennessee?
Yeah, and
okay.
I lived on my parents' property. My first pregnancy, I was working, 6 days on, 1 day off. I was going to the gym. I was fine. This pregnancy, when I came back, I was sleeping all the time. I was exhausted, headaches. Luckily, I was not exposed to the burn pits. I was not exposed to anything major. So she was normal. Because I guess, and one of the things that I talk to people about is people ask me, what is Gulf War syndrome? What is all of these things? Well, I think it was 2010 or 2011, I was part of the government study, the Gulf War study. And they picked 50 veterans. I think they ended up with 38. And they flew me to Atlanta, Georgia, and they took it's actually finally healed, took years, and they took a punch all the way down to the bone.
Ooh.
And they took urine and blood and all of this stuff. And they found out that
they took bone marrow? Is that what
no,
they did?
went all the way down to the bone. They went way
bone.
down. Yeah. And what they were doing is they were testing the myelin sheath. So the myelin sheath is that coating around the nerves. So like when someone comes up to me and I'm having a bad day, just going like this hurts.
Could hurt, right.
And it affects everything. And so they discovered that Gulf War vets, due to the vaccinations, the PB tablets, the DDT, all the stuff that we were exposed to, the myelin sheath is eroded. So we have the pain issues, we have the sensitivity issues.
Is that kind of like fibromyalgia or no?
It's fibromyalgia on steroids. So they call
on
it fibro.
Steroids?
Yeah, so I got rated for fibro, and luckily I had a good CMP examiner, and she understood the difference between chronic fatigue and fibromyalgia.
Okay.
Because a lot of times, if you don't differentiate them, they lump the symptoms in together, you only get one thing. So fibro is max rated at 40, chronic fatigue is max rated at 100. So you have to know the difference, and you have to go for both of those things. Because if not, you may end up with just a 40% rating, and you're pretty much debilitated.
So how did Cochise County get lucky enough to get you here? What ended up drawing you down here?
My parents.
Your parents were down here?
Yeah, I was in Tennessee, and then I moved to New Mexico because Holloman Air Force Base. Beautiful, great people. And then my parents moved down here, and then I just kind of came to visit, and I fell in love with Tucson at the time. And so I moved to Tucson in 1999, joined corrections in 2001, and then my parents moved to Alabama, moved back, and then I came down here and fell in love with this place. Because, Tucson's a bigger city, crowded, a little bit dirtier, but here it's just, and I had no idea at the time that it was military, that we had 20-something thousand veterans in Cochise County.
Where did you work at in corrections when you were in Tucson?
I was at Wilmot Prison.
At the Wilmot Prison?
Yeah, I was there for 10 years, and I just soon forget about all that.
That's not a women's facility, is it?
No, the women's facility at the time was in another place because they have it only in one spot, and it's moved around. I worked with the level 3, level 4, and the minors. I worked with the minors for about a year and a half.
My brother-in-law, he's retired. What you just said? What
correctional officer?
Correctional officer. Thank you. Anyhow, yeah, and he worked at Douglas, and I tell you the things that the correction officers see, what they go through on a daily basis, I can understand why you don't want to go into any of that stuff, and we won't. But
it's a fishbowl. It's a very negative environment,
right? And
especially as a female, you have to be on alert. You can't wear perfume, the makeup you wear, the things you say, the way you stand,
right? Because
they're always watching, and so it's just.
And I think that our correction officers are probably another overlooked hero.
Yes, they are.
I mean, we have so many already with like Border Patrol, and we've had the National Guard coming down to help out with the borders and law. I mean, we could make a whole list of everybody that deserves to be called a hero for some of the jobs that they do.
Every single day.
Well, because they're dealing with a dangerous element. I mean, these people that are in jail, they're not in there for spitting on the sidewalk.
No.
They're in there for some pretty
serious
crimes.
issues. So you may have one yard where there's 300, 400 inmates, and you got 10 officers.
Yeah.
And you can't have a stun gun, you can't have a weapon, you don't have weapons on the yard. So it's basically you, your wits, and a couple of fences.
So what year did you retire as border? Here I go again. As correctional officer.
I left in 2010. I left
in 2010.
My physical. Luckily, corrections worked with me. So in the summer, I would switch to graveyard shifts because the heat was too much for me. And in the winter, I would switch to a day shift because to get the sun, because the cold on my bones. And then I promoted several times. And so I ended up as a CO3 before I left. So it was Monday through Friday, civilian clothes. But I lost 3 friends in the last year before I left. One had just retired, had a heart attack. One was within, I think, a few months of retirement. He had a heart attack. And then we had another one had a heart attack. And then my condition had gotten worse. My kids were grown, so I ended up, but it took care of me. I raised my kids basically as a single parent for almost 10 years.
And then correction officers, they're state employees?
Yes.
Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
But do they get any credit for time served in the military?
No, that's if you're federal.
Retirement? Only federal does that work?
Yeah, I think you can buy back your time.
Yeah.
You can buy back a couple up to so many years of your military service, because my ex-husband, who was a correctional officer, did that. Mm-hmm. And he bought back some years, so he was able to add that to his retirement.
Yeah.
I didn't have that kind of money.
That's the only kind of benefit to doing that, really, is for your retirement.
Now, if you go federal corrections, which is right next door to the Wilmot prison, you get automatic credit because it's considered you're under a federal ban.
Federal, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So now you're here in Sierra Vista, and you got here what year?
I came here in 2017 to help take care of my parents.
Okay.
I was only supposed to stay for about 2 years, but my parents got worse. They entered their 70s, and my father ended up, towards the end, he ended up at AFib. He was on oxygen, and my mother was, 5 years older than him. Mm-hmm. And so I basically did the housework and the yard work, and towards the end, I was taking over the finances and basically doing everything. But COVID took them out in October of 2021.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, within a week. My dad he was actually at home and he wasn't that sick, but when he finally, about a week later, he passed. Within 2 days, my mother fought. She was almost 80. She fought for 2 weeks at the hospital.
Wow.
Yeah. So
I'm sorry to hear that.
I mean, what do you say, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it happens, and that kind of leads into where we're going next, is with what you kind of do, not what you kind of do, what you do here at the Warrior Healing Center, and that's helping veterans with legal documentation.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a paralegal, so I tell people that up front. But prior to my parents' death, they needed a will. They didn't have power of attorney. And we tried to go find a lawyer, and it was, $1,000, $1,500, up to $3,000 to do this documentation.
Oh, yeah, it's expensive.
I know. So I taught myself how to do it. You can do it with pre-filled forms. I use the Attorney General's website for the state of Arizona. You can pull down living wills, medical power of attorneys. I pulled a financial power of attorney from a legal eDocs site. Mm-hmm. And then I took a will that a lawyer actually did for me. So I can't tell a veteran what to do. I can share my experiences, and then I can help them fill out the forms that I download. Okay? And that's why I started volunteering here. And then when my parents passed, I had all of this documentation, Michael, but I missed a couple of things. I didn't understand about the beneficiary deed for the house, and I weren't on their bank accounts as beneficiaries. And they had COVID. We'd fought for weeks. I had COVID. I was very, very ill. And it cost me $6,500 to contact a probate lawyer. Because I didn't understand. Now, I understand how to do it. I just pull the form, the 78-page packet from the Cochise County website, and I would do it myself.
78 pages?
Yeah. I mean, you don't need them all. But at the time, I was literally 2 days after my parents died, the banks were calling me because the VA notifies the Social Security Administration, and then my parents passed away at the end of the month. My father passed away the 25th. My mother passed away the 31st, 2 hours before the end of the month. Well, they'd already gotten their pay, so they were trying to suck that pay back. A lot of people, they don't know that. Right. And because I'm not a spouse, I couldn't file for month of death reimbursement for their benefits. So long story short, it cost me $70-something thousand, $90,000 total to save my parents' house and to settle their estates because I didn't have a few missing pieces and I didn't understand how the laws work.
Which is where the knowledge that you have will come in so valuable to people in our area, because I'm sure that there are a lot of people like myself. I mean, I'm 65 years old. I could go at any minute. I don't have a living will or a trust or anything set up. So I know.
Yeah. So what and I'm dealing with a couple of clients that they're patients
Right.
in a life care facility that don't have power of attorneys. And if you're deemed incompetent or you're in a situation where you have been hypoxic or it's too late. You legally, that person cannot sign that document. So we have a gentleman right now I'm working with, and his wife's in life care, and he can't do anything because he has no power of attorney.
Well, I will say I did fill out the form to be buried on Fort Huachuca, and I tried to get access to the forms that I knew about. But like what you're saying, when the veteran passes, and especially if the spouse is dependent upon that income, if that's their only source of income, all of a sudden it's gone.
It is, because someone who's married to someone who's getting a big disability and a retirement payment, if they don't have the SBP plan to give them a percentage of their retirement, and they would qualify for DIC, but that's $1,100, $1,300 a month. So you have a wife who goes from $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 a month down to less than $2,000.
Right.
And if I worked with one woman, she's much younger than her husband. She doesn't qualify for Social Security benefits till she's 62. Well, she's 56.
And what does she do if God forbid?
She's cleaning house, and she will get the DIC, but that's and they're making like $7,000, $8,000 a month right now with all of the benefits. So I basically help them try to make decisions, and then that's what we're going to do future live streams. We're going to talk about, we call it the final deployment book. We're going to have an actual
Interesting. Okay.
Where we have a couple of new volunteers who worked with paralegal department and financial education. So we're going to work together to have, either live streams and monthly seminars about, financial planning, getting your stuff in order. Then we're going to talk about we call it final deployment.
That's great. I like that.
Yeah, what to do. And I'm a notary, and they're going to become notaries, so we do it for free, okay? If someone has really complicated issues, I do refer them to a lawyer. I've had to do that a few times because they needed a trust or they had a lot of stuff. So that's going to be one, and then the other one's going to be just veterans benefits in general. A lot of veterans who are Vietnam era veterans or even Gulf War veterans have a lot of things they can get that they don't know about. Whether they're rated or not rated, they can still get things. Like we had a gentleman, he's 80, he's not rated because he was not, he served right before the cutoff for a Vietnam era veteran. So he's not rated, but he's 80 and he needs help. So a lot of people don't know that the VA doctor can give them home health aides. Doesn't matter if you're rated, doesn't matter if you're considered disabled. If you're a certain age and you need help with activities of daily living, the VA will pay to have a caregiver come to your house.
Right.
And a lot of people, they don't know that.
See, like in my case, when I got a mortgage, I took the VA insurance. So it's weird how it works though, because they only allow you to change it one time. You only get one change. So when I started out at like 200,000. So if I die, and if I owed $200,000 or less, then the house is paid off for my wife. If I owed more than 200, then she'd be responsible for so you're allowed one change, right? So now we got our mortgage down to, I think, about 100,000. And I'm thinking now it's time to get that change in because I'm paying all that extra money for $200,000 worth of coverage when I really only need.
And what program is this?
I thought it was VGLI or something like that. It's through the VA, but it covers the home loans.
Remind me to look into that.
Insurance.
Because I thought VGLI was just straight life insurance, but you're saying there's something attached to your house.
Well, I pay for it. The VA takes it out of my VA each month.
Okay. See, now I need to learn about that. That's something else I don't know about.
Yeah.
So, but there's a lot, and so we're going to try to get the information out to the veterans to get them set up, because a lot of this stuff has to do, you're gone, but if you care about your family, my parents had no idea that I was going to be left with all of this. I know they didn't, you know. And then, of course, after they died, I got all my paperwork buttoned up. You know, got my beneficiaries, got the beneficiary deed done. I had to refinance the house to pay a lot of the debt off, but everything's buttoned up for me now. And then I went and tripled my insurance, because a lot of people don't know that when you pass, if you have a house, in order for your family to get that house, you have to pay off the debts.
Right.
And my dad was a spender. So I had to pay off all of these debts to save the house. That's why I say it was 90-something thousand total.
And I stand corrected, because it just dawned on me. I think when you're in active duty, it's SGLI, but then when you get out and convert, you can convert it, and that's VGLI. But I know that it is some kind of an insurance, life insurance.
It's mortgage insurance attached to
mortgage
your house.
insurance,
Yes.
yeah. But it's through the VA, because the VA is the one that takes the money.
I'm gonna have
to Google it now and look and see.
Look it up. Yeah, so that's why we want to have seminars, because just talking to one veteran at a time, it takes a lot of time and energy. And I am disabled. I know I don't look it, but I have good days. I have bad days. You know, I worked yesterday, but the day before I was in bed most of the day. I worked, you know, Saturday and Sunday, but Monday I was flat. I have to rest. You know.
Yeah, we all do.
So that's what I do for the Warrior Healing Center. You know, I want to help them get their life in order, because a lot of this stuff matters when you're alive, and you need to get power of attorneys done, medical power of attorneys done, before you get to the point that you need them. Does that make sense?
Yes. And one of the benefits that you provide is you can look at on the face of the person coming in the door before the appointment with you, their face, they're all stressed. You can see it in their face. They're like this, right? And then they come in and they sit down with you for an hour, hour and a half, however long it takes for you to do your magic. And they leave there, they're smiling, they feel much more at ease. And that's something that you provide here at the center. And I think that's a valuable
thank you.
Tool. So thank you for doing that for our veterans here in the area, because it's a valuable skill that you have that not everybody knows how to do.
I learned from years of doing it.
Right.
You know, doing it for family members. Like the power of attorney that we use, I went through 4 different ones. And this power of attorney is, you know, I take care of a Vietnam vet with dementia. Luckily, I was his friend before he had dementia, and we did this power of attorney, so I was able to pull him out of a terrible situation. And now he lives fine. You know, he gets a caregiver that comes in. He gets 3 meals a day. His conditions are, you know, under control. He's happy. He's fat and happy. He watches TV and he eats. That's pretty much what he does.
And you know, power of attorneys can be a nightmare too. Did you know that the VA does not recognize?
They sure don't.
Power of attorneys.
They're the one organization that doesn't.
I know. Isn't that weird?
No.
I mean, you go up to JAG, right? You go up to a military place. You go up there. You get everything documented, power of attorney, everything is all done and legalized, but yet the VA, another government facility or government agency, and they don't recognize it. I don't know.
I wonder, though, if that's because they don't want someone coming and taking advantage of the veterans. Because what I did was I used the power of attorney to, you know, because some woman was stealing, like, all of his money.
Oh, my.
Yeah, because he had dementia, and she was pretending like she was his daughter. She took like $10,000 from him. He was 19 months behind on his bills and his mortgage payment. The reason why he didn't get kicked out was because of the COVID. So remember, they signed the bill that nobody can be evicted and the utilities can't. So he was right on the end of that. And so I was able to get the house sold, catch him up, take over his care, get him caught up. So with the VA, you have to go through a process to become a fiduciary. I'm now a federal fiduciary for him. So they interview you, they do a background check, you have to do a questionnaire, they do a credit check on the fiduciary, and then you have to get audited. Like I just got audited in January. So I have to show every single thing that I'm spending for him. So the VA does have mechanisms to help take care of someone who can't take care of themselves.
It could be really tricky though, because like filing claims at the DAV, if you have a bedridden veteran and he or she cannot come in to file their claim and wants the spouse to do that, well, they can do it on everything except the VA forms. So there's a lot of things that we can't do, so then the spouse ends up having to take the documentation home and have the spouse sign it, and it's just a little bit of an inconvenience. But
when I have a situation like that, I go out to the house. I've done that on a couple of occasions. And then, like I said, I want to go to CSO training with DAV, and then I want to upgrade to VSO because I want to be able to help the veterans. Because like I said, if I had just gone through the regular thing, I wouldn't have gotten what I got the first time.
Now, I know a chapter service officer, I know that they're volunteer and do it for free, but a VSO, don't they get paid?
No.
I thought they got paid by the...
I don't think so.
Isn't that like what the guys, the two guys are? I think it's two gentlemen that work at the cemetery that file claims.
I don't know if they get paid.
I
My whole
thought they
point,
did.
yeah, my whole point of wanting to get as much as I could
Right.
was to help the veterans, because like with this veteran that I take care of, he's a Vietnam vet. He didn't go to Vietnam. He flew over to pick up the cameras and flew back to Germany, but there's no orders, so I
Right.
couldn't prove boots on the ground. But because he's an era veteran, I kept putting in for a pension and aid in attendance because of his dementia and his need, and I kept getting denied. So I had to pay $3,500 to an organization. I mean, they were great. They helped me, but it cost me money to help go through the all-text application, the pension application, to try to reapply for disability. And I didn't understand because I kept getting turned down because he made too much.
Oh, wow.
Well, $3,000 isn't enough to take care of a dementia patient who
Nope.
needs care. A facility is minimum $6,000, $7,000 a month. So I didn't understand about that. So I learned through that process. So these are the things. So the more I learn, the more I can help the veterans. So that's why I do that. So with him, because I'm a caregiver, I just had to fill out an affidavit because he pays me. Now he pays me. I did it for free for the first 14 months.
Okay.
But I moved him into my house after my parents died. So now he pays me. So I was able to do an affidavit. So now he gets pension and aid in attendance.
Wow.
So I did that one little piece of paper.
And
I
you
didn't
did
know
that
about.
on your own, huh?
No, senior planning showed me how to do it.
Oh, okay.
$3,500. But now that I know,
You can do it now.
I can help a veteran do it without having to pay those
That
fees.
$3,500.
Yes. Now, if I hadn't got what they went for, I would have got the money back. And then
Okay.
so I considered it no risk. But the cool thing is that when I got the pension and aid in attendance, remember I told you I got denied the year before?
Yes.
They back paid him.
Oh, okay.
So I was
Good
able
deal.
to get him the medical equipment and everything that he needed. And the difference is when you're a pensioner, you have no copays. So he's paying $253 a month for his medication and his copays in every single appointment. Now he doesn't pay anything.
I haven't come across very many cases where I've done just a pension. Most everything that I've done has been with compensation, and man, there's so many
The
forms.
pension
to fill out.
is the secret weapon for Vietnam veterans that served between the date in 1964, I think, and 1974. I have the dates in my office.
Okay.
Who didn't have boots on the ground, but now they're at an advanced age, and they may or may not qualify for all the veterans benefits.
Gotcha. Okay.
So putting them in that pensioner status gets them extra money because they do need caregivers. They do need extra help, and it puts money back in their pocket because they're not paying copays.
Wow.
It's so that's one of the things that I want to start doing live streams about. Include that in our veterans benefit monthly seminars. We have to break it up into 3 because you can't sit there for 9 hours. People can't do that.
I highly encourage you to do these live streams because I think that you'll get a good.
But I'm not a
turnout 'cause
lawyer.
A lot of good Well, no, but
I'll have a piece of paper right here, Mike, that says not a lawyer, not a paralegal the whole time I'm talking.
yeah, or have it scrolling down below somewhere.
But I will tell you that all the documents that I use come from like the Attorney General's website,
Right.
from a legal doc, and I use them to settle my parents' estate. I use them to take over my friend's life to put him in a better situation. I've helped other people and all these documents, and they've stood the test, and they've worked. And so that's why I use the ones that I do.
Do you have any other thing that you'd like to share with us before we close here? Do you have any community activities that you want to share with us, or does it keep you pretty busy doing the legal stuff?
This actually keeps us busy, but I actually we're working on a nonprofit, the Warrior House Project, because my friend that I took care of, I tried to find a place for him.
Okay.
But if you have dementia and you're not violent like an Alzheimer's patient, or you don't wander, you don't qualify for a lockdown unit. So I went
Okay.
to over 20 group homes. I couldn't find a group home that was decent except for one.
Here in our area?
No, it was in Tucson. I had him in Tucson at the time.
Okay.
So I had to move him into an apartment with my son. So somebody has to be there 24 hours, and I was driving up there for free twice a week. His daughter was helping because I could not find placement for him. And then the one homes I looked at, there was poop on the floor, or people were lying in their own crap, or there was one person for 15 patients. And then the bigger facilities, he's a dementia patient. You can't put him in an assisted living. And at the time, he was uncontrolled pooping. We got that under control. But so because of that, we're founding the Warrior House Project. So what we want to do, and one of the issues that the Warrior Healing Center deals with is homeless veterans. It's their mission:
Right.
suicide prevention, homeless
Yes.
veterans. So once we get the 501c3, we're going to have our vision is to have like a home or a place where we could put veterans who just need one night or 2 nights or a week, or just an emergency temporary situation. And then we want to have a few homes that a veteran have a key, and his room is his, has a mini fridge in it, and they're in a safe home setting. And then we're also looking at a tiny house village. We're trying to work with some local people here in Sierra Vista. People are amazing. To where we have a couple acres and we have some tiny homes, so the veteran can have their homes, and in return, they give a little bit back. Are you going to, drive the car? Can they pay a little bit of rent? Can they do this? And then eventually we want to have an assisted living home for people like TJ, but we want to have it staffed. We want to have it to where there's not poop on the floor. They're not lying in their own filth, because the VA, there's a lack of facilities for both homeless veterans that the Warrior Healing Center, need a short,
Right.
there's just no place, especially here in Cochise County. And then the state home, there's last I checked, 68 veterans on the waiting list. And people like TJ don't qualify because they're not rated.
Well, with Hummingbird opening up what used to be the Windermere Hotel, did that help provide any of these services?
I haven't gone over there to talk to them yet, because I had RSV in December.
I'm not even sure if they're quite open yet.
I'm
I know
not sure.
that they were.
If they are, we're definitely going to go over there
Uh-huh.
and talk to them and try to, if they will help veterans, if they will help with anything that the Warrior Healing Center needs, we need to build that bridge so that we can start sending these veterans over there.
Because the way I understand it, they're not a corporation
Okay.
owned, from what I've heard through the grapevine. They're more of a private funded or something, maybe. I don't know. I don't know. I didn't think it was like a big corporation type thing. So
Well, we need to go check that out, because if we can build that bridge for either the short-term emergency or the long-term, then we can. So that's what we're working on. That's why I'm thankful. We just got 2 new volunteers. I'm not going to say their name. Wonderful. They're both 20-something years retired military, and they're going to help. So we'll have 3 people that are notaries, 3 people that can help you fill out the wills and the power of attorneys, 3 people that can help me do the live streams, and that just happened last week. So thank you.
And can you use any more volunteers?
Yes, we can use. So what we're doing, this other couple, I guess they spent 20 years in the military creating programs. So they're going to create programs. So we do need volunteers to help come to the events. Because if we have 15 veterans there, instead of meeting with them individually, we can pass out the living wills right there. We can pass out, this is what they need. And then we take their information, do the wills, bring them back for signing. So we can do that there. It makes it quicker.
So anybody that's watching this live stream, if they wanted to make an appointment to sit down with you, what would the steps be to do that?
Just give me a call, or just come into the front desk and let them know.
Okay.
Just give them your name and your phone number, and say I want to volunteer for the legal docs, for the documentation with Michelle Mitzner, and they'll send me your number. And we can use all that, because the more help we get, the more we can reach. This is something that because I want. Even though we're doing the Warrior House Project, it's going to be underneath the Warrior Healing Project. So everything we do, because again, the Warrior Healing is about suicide prevention. They get veterans come in here and they're in crisis, and they from the very first day. And that's what's impressive, is that if a veteran comes in and they're like color-coded red or orange or whatever, Tim and Kathy, and Keith, they drop everything to help that veteran.
Right.
So I'm hoping that by providing seminars and providing more services, we can bring in more of the community that will help bring in more volunteers, maybe more donations. Just think about it. If they just donated $22 a month, that would help the Warrior Healing Center with their mission. So we're trying to get everybody working together, get more of the community involved, and help more veterans. So.
And also, if we have any veterans that are watching that want to take advantage of the notary and some of the legal documentation that they do with you, would they do that same process? Would they come in here? Would they call you?
Yeah, you can do an intake. If you've already
do an intake
done
first.
An intake, you can come into the Warrior Healing Center and you can sit there and just say, I want help with my will, my power of attorney, my whatever. Or you can, don't you have like a link, a web link?
Well, from the way I understand how things work now, it's only taken me over a year to learn this process. Like, duh. When they do come in and they do an intake, then I can make an appointment for with Beth, and then Beth will sit down with the veteran, go through everything with
Yes.
them, and then she will send them off to the. That's why I was wondering if
Yeah, if someone's already
So-
done an intake and they've already gone through the initial meeting with Beth,
right.
you can just redo the intake and just say, I just need help with my legal, my POA. If you have a relationship with Beth, just let her know. If I'm here, grab me.
And don't put it off either.
Please
Don't put it off. That's what I'm doing. I'm gonna get off my
To cook us?
my butt and yeah.
Yes. And so, or just do the intake. There should be the intake should be on the Facebook page, right?
Yep.
And just do an intake, say you need help. And what happens is when you do an intake and you need this, or you need help with groceries, or you need help with housing, or you have food insecurities, or you need legal help. When you fill it out, you put what you want, and then it goes to Beth or Kathy or Tim, and then they send referrals
Yep.
to people. So I'll get your name and your phone number. I'll call you, and I'll either email you, or you can come in, pick up some worksheets, or we'll just set up a meeting
Okay.
and take care of it. It doesn't take that long, but again, trying to do one veteran at a time is difficult, so we have to get smarter with reaching veterans.
And what was the name of the business that you have? Because I know you had some business cards up front.
That's the Warrior House Project. So that's going to be the one that's going to deal with the housing issues that the Warrior Healing Center has.
Okay.
So
any last words of wisdom, or you want to share with everybody here? Or?
just take care of your business. It's better to need it and not have it than have it and not need it. And
Yep.
if and a lot of the stuff is for after you pass, for your peace of mind now. But there are things that do matter for when you're still here, especially if you're aging.
Yep.
And with all of the stuff happening with the died suddenly thing, people are just and with the pandemic and whatever's coming next, and just take care of it. It costs you. We do it for free.
Well, we got. I know. I took 3 injections. So I mean,
That's another live stream.
Who's to say what's going to come down the road from that? So basically, what it boils down to is we're not guaranteed tomorrow.
Nope.
So don't put it off. Come in and see Michelle and get this legal documentation, especially if you're a homeowner. I would think.
If you're a homeowner
or property owner,
yes,
or have a lot of assets.
or even things
Yeah.
that you want to leave to your family, or you don't want to leave your family. If you don't have a home, it's not as big of a deal as far as paying off the debt. But if there is a home involved, even if you have a beneficiary deed that allows you to directly pass that home, whoever gets it, the estate is still responsible. So that's why these other volunteers are going to talk about getting your financial affairs in order, maybe getting some. I actually thought about getting life insurance.
Yeah.
Because I sold life insurance right out of high school to military members through Armed Forces Benefit. And I'm thinking about doing that again just because so many military veterans, they don't have it. And so I'm a big believer in insurance, getting your legal docs in order, and taking care of your family. Those are...
Well, yeah, because once we're gone, we want to make sure our loved ones are taken care of. So.
Yes.
Well, Michelle, thank you so much
Thank
for
you, sir.
coming in and sitting down with us, and we're looking forward to your live streams. Keep us up to date. And if I hear anything, I'll let the audiences know here when you're going to be doing these live streams or the seminars that you're planning. So some of the events that we have coming up here today at the Warrior Healing Center, we have Hot Soup Friday today. Today is vegetable stew and beef noodle.
Yummy.
So it's the first day of Lent for me, so I can't have meat. So I wonder if that vegetable stew, I think I might be able to have that as long as there's no meat in there. Yum, yum. Sounds good. Saturday, 10 o'clock to 1300 is the Team RWB Social Ride. Oh my gosh. I'm supposed to pronounce that? Ho McKenzemsimacom?
What?
Yeah, right?
Yeah, it's a social
MTV.
ride. It's a social ride.
It's a social ride at the. They're meeting at the mall in Sierra Vista. That's tomorrow, starting at 10 o'clock, and it goes to 1300. On Mondays, don't forget to join the Warrior Healing Center at 1730 to 1830 as they do the 5 Treasures of Qigong. On Tuesday, February 28th, starting at 1400, going to 1530 is the Trualta Tuesday Hope and Wellness Support Gear. That's a support group for caregivers. So if you're a caregiver and you're looking for some place that you need some support, then Tuesday 1400 hours, be here at the Warrior Healing Center. On Friday, March 3rd, starting at 1700, going to 1900, we have the DAV Fry Chapter 14th. Is their monthly chicken fried steak dinner, and that's going to be held at the VFW post 9972. And last Saturday, March 4th, starting at 0800, going to 1200, we have Team RWB doing the Pomona Mine Trail hike. That one I could pronounce, at Brown Canyon Trail. And also don't forget that AARP is here doing everybody's taxes. If you haven't gotten your taxes done yet and you'd like to get your taxes done, it's done here for free. You don't even have to be a veteran, just come in. Make an appointment because it is by appointment. So come in the front desk and they'll help you get an appointment and get you set up to get your taxes done for free. So that's all I have, everybody. Thanks again for joining us. Michelle, again, thank you so much.
Thank you for what you do.
And we will see you all next Friday. Everybody have a good day and a good weekend. Bye-bye.